18, 2024. Joining today's press conference is the leader of the People's National Congress Reform and the opposition, Mr. Aubrey C. Norton, Member of Parliament. Today's press statement will be read by the leader.
Jagdeo and the PPP continue to deny the existence of high cost of
We are not hearing you.
Is the sound up and running now? Right. Thank you.
Start already, Dennis.
I saw Mr. Norton speaking, but nobody's hearing him.
Are you hearing?
I'm only hearing you, Adam.
Are you?
I heard,
Are you hearing me?
for the press conference.
Are you hearing me?
That's true. I saw his mouth walking, so I don't know.
You hearing me now?
Yes, we're hearing you now, Mr. Norton. Go ahead, sir.
Jagdeo and the PPP continue to deny the existence of high cost of living. Second Vice President Parrot Jagdeo has to be blind, deaf, or just insensitive to the realities in Guyana as it relates to the high cost of living? Or is it that because he is not, or is it, let me go to Second Vice President Barrett Jagdeo has to be blind, deaf, or just insensitive to the realities in Guyana as it relates to the high cost of living? Or is it that because he is not dumb, he chooses to make statements which are out of touch with the realities of Guyana? 2 days ago, the Stabroek News reported Vice President Parrot Jagdeo as claiming his government continues to actively ease the cost of living burden on its citizens. He sought, therefore, to discredit the Stabroek News weekly cost of living series as, I quote, a political ploy, unquote, and to dismiss the grievances expressed by citizens as bias. But as several commentators correctly observed, Jagdeo must be living in an alternate universe, or he is detached from the reality faced by ordinary Guyanese. However, in our view, Jagdeo's attempt to dismiss the daily hardships of ordinary Guyanese are directly due to him and his party's heartlessness for the plight of the vast majority of citizens across all regions and ethnic groups, and the fact that they live an elitist life and not in touch with the sufferings of the people of Guyana. Jagdeo's use of abstract figures on expenditures to defend his government only adds insult to injury. Instead, he should visit the homes and kitchens of ordinary citizens if he is really interested in knowing how they feel. Alas, he's not that interested. Struggling Guyanese, including those who voted for the PPP, must reflect on Jagdeo's continued rejection of high cost of living and poor living standards as their daily reality. They will most likely conclude, if they haven't already, that under the PPP government, life in Guyana is a burden that will not get better once it remains in office. The PPP's priorities are directed elsewhere, towards their business friends, families, and favorites. The PPP's reliance on large expenditure on infrastructure only creates false hopes for the many Guyanese on the lower and middle rungs of the economic ladder. Spending the monies Jagdeo claims were spent on fuel subsidies is an ineffective approach to ease the living costs. Such subsidies do not adequately trickle down to the ordinary citizens, and those who least need a subsidy, the already well-to-do, benefit the most, while the most needy benefit the least. Moreover, the PPP claims that it has increased disposable income by tens of billions of dollars is a mirage, as most of it has been swallowed up by the high and increasing cost of living. Jack Doe's response at his press conference yesterday that all this is how the free market works further exposes his indifference and his cluelessness in economic management. There is no free market in Guyana. The economics of Guyanese society is dominated and controlled in large measure by the PPP. Just check the allocation of over $666 billion, which are allocated to the PPP elite, their families, friends, and favorites through infrastructure, and you will see that the people of Guyana do not benefit. We accept that the PPP is incompetent and divisive. What we cannot accept is their unwillingness to listen to sensible, well thought out advice. On the 7th March 2024, we advised the PPP on the following, and I quote, that since the PPP continues to demonstrate a lack of interest in or even understanding of the cost of living crisis, we take this opportunity to highlight some of the measures we have been advancing for the last 2 years. We have called for the following. 1, the provision of a 50% salary increase for public servants at the time. 2, the raising of the tax-free threshold to $150,000 per month to put more money in the hands of the over 200,000 Guyanese workers in the public and private sectors. 3, the development of regional agriculture to reduce the costs of food. 4, the provision of large grants to help farmers purchase equipment to bring costs down. 5, the distribution of fuel vouchers to bring the cost of fuel down for farm to market transportation. 6, the provision of 2 hot meals to students to ease food costs the parents face, the food costs that their parents face. 7, the establishment of a school transportation network to remove student transportation costs. 8, the immediate distribution of the unexpected $300 million windfall in oil revenue earned in 2022 due to the war in Ukraine. In addition to those, we outline many other measures that should be taken to reduce the cost of living, but the PPP continues to be deaf, blind, and insensitive to the Guyanese reality. We have concluded that as the next government, we will invest directly in the people of Guyana through our people-centered development strategy. We will work to ensure all Guyanese households are guaranteed a livable income within the shortest possible time. We will ensure that the country's oil wealth reaches the purses, pockets, and bank accounts of ordinary people. While the PPP believes in trickle-down economics, we in the opposition believe in the economics of the food cupboard and livable wages and incomes. The choices Guyanese will face at the next election could not therefore be more contrasting. On the one hand, a stagnant or declining quality of life under the PPP, and on the other hand, a government led by us that puts the well-being of the people first and at the center of its concerns, agenda, and development. Urgent and comprehensive attention needed to reduce road accident and fatalities on our roadways. As with most Guyanese, we in the opposition are alarmed over the sharp rise in road accidents, injuries, and deaths. This carnage has engulfed all our highways and all types of road users and vehicles, from pedestrian and motorcycles to cars, buses, and trucks. The government response to date has not inspired any public confidence. This is a national crisis that requires urgent and robust government responses. We in the opposition, therefore, call on the government to at minimum take the following advice. 1, addressing congestion and road deaths need to be tackled within a policy framework that is data-driven. 2, a review of traffic accident statistics be urgently undertaken to determine the range of causes for the accidents and their relative contribution. These include speeding, driver inattention, driving under the influence, animal vehicle conflict, pedestrian vehicle conflict, fixed object crashes, intersection crashes, safety audit. The third thing, safety audits must be conducted on our major roads like Essequibo Coast Road, West Coast and West Bank Demerara roads, Linden Susdike Highway, East Coast Road, and the Quarantine Highway. As part of this audit, all substandard design elements that contribute to reducing the safety to the roadway must be identified. Such elements could include rideability, that is the state of the surface of the road. Example, the Susdike Linden Highway, which is now difficult to traverse. Proximity of fixed objects to the carriageway, passing sight distances, and the roadway turn design. This audit will allow us to direct the necessary funding to improve safety in a data-driven and targeted manner. We need to end government issuing of contracts to build roads just for the sake of putting money in the hands of their cronies. 4, robust education and enforcement programs must become a norm. We too regularly, after accidents, become involved in a campaigns which do not last long and are ineffective. As the next government, we are already preparing a more comprehensive road safety and traffic management plan with the assistance of road and transportation engineers. I thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I will take questions on the press statement.
Department that is involved in areas. Sir, could you tell us why do you think that your model or approach or strategy to reduce the cost of living will in fact work?
First, the minute you increase the threshold from where it is to 150,000, thousands of people will have more to earn. Second, if you look at the high cost of living, we talk about agriculture in all regions. If you develop agriculture in all regions, what will happen is you will have a certain amount of food sufficiency, and in all regions, the cost of food will come down. Now, Ropanoni or it coming from Brazil. If you go to region 8, Madhya, you note that the food are coming from out of the communities, when in fact, the community's capacity and the very fact of them producing food will be in a situation where they are earning and are in a better position to live. We mentioned 50% salary increase at the time. It will have to be more, but I don't think we need to explain why a proper salary increase will impact people in a positive way. And we have to take this also with the comment we made on agriculture and increasing production and productivity, because the vice president seems to have a theory that once you put more money in the economy, inflation will follow. Well, if you have the concomitant production and productivity, there will be goods and services to absorb the money. But interestingly, he doesn't ask this question when it comes to putting billions of dollars in the contractors' hands. We talk about large grant to help farmers purchase equipment to bring costs down. That should be obvious. If you have mechanisms to help farmers to purchase vehicles, etc., and bring the cost down, that will benefit people in a direct way. We talk about distribution of fuel vouchers to bring the cost of fuel down from farm to market transportation. You are talking about removing the tax from fuel, but the evidence suggests it's just a few fuel importers that benefit from that. However, if there is a register of the people who actually carry the farm produce to the market, and it is monitored, what will happen is that the cost for getting it to market will be less and the price at the marketplace will be less. The provision of 2 hot meals to students. Now, we have long argued that with the high cost of living, with low wages, and with the income from oil, one can develop a program to ensure our children get breakfast and lunch at school. Immediately, that will remove Monday to Friday, the children, parents having to find that. Secondly, it will be an incentive for those children who can't afford it to see the need to go to school. So it has more than one effect. It will help the parents, it will bring down the cost of living, it will, assuming we reduce the corruption, give children a nutritious meal. Because one of the problems the PPP will find implementing this is everything they touch is corrupt. And so the children might not get the dietary needs they need, the nutrition they need. And so we are talking about this, assuming that it's a government that cares about the people and a government that is dealing with corruption. Unfortunately, the PPP isn't. We talk about the establishment of a school transportation network. Now, there are many children who cannot get to school. I was in the Pomeroon, and every parent that spoke complained about the cost to get their children by boat to school. One child at the time was costing $1,000 per day. Some families got 4 children to send to school. So if you have the transportation, the buses, the boats, etc., then that burden will be removed from the families. And then we said immediate distribution of the unexpected $300 million windfall. Now that has increased because the last figure showed that there is increased interest on that investment. Now that those funds can be used to give public servants a higher wage, a higher salary, and therefore it will impact them directly. The government, unfortunately, is playing this trickle-down economics approach, and the people of Ghana aren't benefited. So these were just 8 measures we identified in my budget speech in 2023. We identified many more measures that can bring down the cost of living.
Thank you. Mr. Adam.
Dr. Paul, please, if you
Go ahead.
What will you do with the existing subsidies on electricity and water? Will those be retained or will you discard it?
They are likely to be increased for certain sectors. We do believe that the vulnerable in this society should benefit. And I don't see us discarding it. What we're not going to allow is an abuse of it. But as we look at vulnerable groups, you have single parents. Once you can authenticate that they're a single parent and they have a child or 2, then you can subsidize, we have argued, their rent, and we can subsidize their electricity and water. Unfortunately, Barra Jagdeo see this as eating out your resources. We see it as contributing to the development of human capital and an investment in the people who will be more comfortable, live a better life, and be productive.
Thank you. Mr. Adam Hurd.
Oh. So is there someone else waiting?
Yes, there is.
Yeah, I was there. That's why I can give the other question. Go.
Yeah, I really wanted to know whether you will have a means test for the subsidy to the electricity company, or you will retain that subsidy in its entirety, say to GPL, and also subsidize the electricity charge to the Diana Water Corporation.
I'm saying to you, everything we do will be data-driven. So we anticipate there will be surveys and means tests. And once we verify their eligibility in keeping with the criteria, Those to be maintained would be maintained. Those to be removed will be removed. But in addition, there are other vulnerable groups we intend to subsidize and help. I mean, it must be alarming for you to see children on the road begging, including adults. You have adults on the road begging. And we can verify their state of affairs. So once it is verified, we can move to subsidize them and create the mechanism for them to either get into employment or business. We're not saying we just want to give you relief for the sake of relief. We want to give you relief. We want to improve your living standards, and at the same time direct you to becoming productive persons. Unlike the government, which sees subsidies and cash grants as a means of creating dependence in order to control, we will take a different approach.
Mr. Adam Harris?
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. My question is based on the fact that the high cost of living is due to the fact that just about every aspect of national life is imported. The agricultural inputs, you name it. The only thing that isn't imported is the labor. Now, has there been a reduction in the volume of production at one time that actually made us believe we were self-sufficient in food? If that is the case, can you reverse the present trend back to the days when production could have gone up with assistance to the producers?
Yes, you can. There are a number of things that one needs to do. First, you will have to revamp drainage and irrigation unit so that adequate drainage and proper irrigation are provided for farmers. Second, you have to put back in place a proper program to ensure you have the agricultural assistance out there. There was a name that they were called years before. I'll try and remember it. But there were people, extension officers, agricultural extension officers. There were people who went out there in all regions, in many communities, and engaging people in agriculture and helping them to transcend the problems they face. That in that era resulted in increased agricultural production. While there is no intention to become involved in banning, what one can do is increase the agricultural production and to extend it wider. Take something like honey, with sugar in trouble, both at the level of the economics of it and the question of health. There is scope in this country for the development of a honey industry. And the honey industry has byproducts. You can produce candles, you can produce soap, a number of things. And these are things, while we were in government, I was involved in doing pilot projects on, and we have seen that once there is a comprehensive approach to it, they can succeed. Apart from that, there is need to do an assessment of the needs in the Guyanese society. How much chicken do we need? There was a time when we were producing all or 99% of the chicken we needed. But now you have corrupt officials who are bringing chicken from Brazil, directing customs to let them pass. And if you come down from the Rupununi, you will see the big trucks coming with the chicken. Then they bring them here, put them in a bag as if they are local, change the bag, put them in the bag as if they are local chicken. And what they do is create a depression in the market. What we will do is put all the mechanisms in place, help their hatcheries, ensure proper baby chicks, ensure that we facilitate the production of chicken in the country to deal with the shortage and at the same time reduce the reliance on chicken coming from overseas. A lot of the chicken coming from overseas has nothing to do with our lack of ability to produce it. It has more to do with the covetousness, the greed of the leadership of the People's Progressive Party, who are prepared to profit at the expense of the people of Guyana and in the long term, the Guyanese economy. There are many areas of agriculture that we can get into. So I believe we can, in very short time, turn around the agricultural economy and ensure that there is the production of agricultural products in a way that allows us to fight the food crisis. But I also said it has to be in all regions, because transportation to regions also create a problem. Take, for instance, Region 10. When we were in government, we were building a farm to market road from the Berbice River to Millie's hideout on the Soosdijk Linden Highway. What that would have done was to ensure the produce coming from the Berbice River can meet Linden, Kamaka, other communities and go further afield. The government, for narrow political partisan reasons, have not continued that road. It is not completed, and so they have stymied agriculture in the Berbice River.
Thank you. Mr. Shabral, your hand is up.
Mr. Rodman, we're going to belabor the question again. In respect to the subsidies to the Diana Water Incorporated and PWI as opposed to individual personal use by way of the success, etc., to which you referred, aren't you worried that if you were to remove those subsidies en bloc as they are, that this will eventually trickle down to higher prices for transportation of
I probably misinterpreted your question. I thought you were talking about subsidies to individuals, like pensioners,
No.
etc. Well, then let me answer that question now. As far as I recall, while we were in government, GPL had begun to make some money. It was in a much better financial position. And I do believe if GPL is properly managed, then you can remove the subsidy. Our approach will be to work towards ensuring those entities are economically viable. While you subsidize them as you move them to viability, your focus has to be on making them economically viable. There are always cases in the evolution of these state institutions where there are times when they need subsidy, but the objective must be to make them economically viable so that they don't become a burden on the nation's resources. And so we will do that, but cognizant of the fact that there is need for subsidy at this point, because you are taking over institutions that were mismanaged, you will have to have the subsidy and a clear plan to move it from being subsidized to being financially viable.
Thank you. Questions on the press?
So,
Go ahead,
if
Mr.
nobody else, quickly, this has to do with the situation of the road. Now, one of the contentions, well, two contentions. One, there are too many vehicles on the road. Would your government consider limiting the importation of vehicles? Bearing in mind that used cars are coming in, and that would involve foreign exchange to buy spare parts because they would tend to break down more than any other thing. And the other thing has to do with the training of the road users. I'm not sure what happens when drivers go for tests. I drive on the road and I see some things that I'm not sure would have been approved by the person testing these drivers. Would your Home Affairs Ministry look at the revamping the system of licensing drivers and riders?
Adam, you know full well that corruption in the police force is at its highest level. It is now being made manifest because people are being exposed at a high level. But there has always been the toleration of that corruption because those are the top want to be corrupt. One of the things you can do is to develop a police force that you pay a proper salary, and a police force that recognize the importance of people who go in for license being schooled, ensuring they pass the exams in a legal way, so that in the final analysis, the people you put on the road are qualified to be on the road. So it is not just, it's this whole thing about the people you find on the road is very much linked to corruption in the wider society, especially police corruption. And I think you also need to recognize, Adam, that we have to rectify the education system to solve some of the problems. We have said before that one of our key focus will be on primary education, in which we seek to ensure that by the time a child meets grade 4 or 5, that child, grade 3 and 4, that child could read, write, count, comprehend, and reason. The problem we have is the education system is failing people. And a lot of the young drivers you see on the road are a product of that system. Additionally, we have arrived at a point where the top of the society is so corrupt and do things so wrong that the average man now comes to accept that wrong is the norm, and that affects the behavior on the road. I always remember years ago while I was teaching one of my daughters to drive. And you should really, when you come in, go out and turn on the other side of the road. But every Guyanese or most Guyanese now just cut straight across. And when I was showing the child what should be done, she said, but they don't do that. It has become the norm. And what we have to do is reduce the lawlessness and bring back some amount of decency and order to the society. As it relates to too many vehicles, I don't believe it's too many vehicles. I do agree that we should bring quality vehicles to Guyana and not burden ourselves with a lot of the used vehicles. And I believe you can take measures even if you carry it back to 8 years. You can take measures to reduce the duty and a number of other things that allow people to bring quality vehicle and at the same time not reduce the amount coming. But the problem is deeper than that. The problem is in the absence of an infrastructural plan. Which idiot will build a road coming from Grove, Diamond to Sheriff Street, knowing that there are a set of villages along the road in which people gotta go in and out and not do overfly, so that the people coming from the villages don't have to stop. They can come onto the main road and go in. And the people on the main road don't have to stop because they are flying over the village. Now, all of these people go to the United States all around, and they see in the modern world that transportation is now above and below. But we continue without a plan to just be above. And so what you have now, every morning, you have to have a set of policemen directing traffic on the East Bank, and the traffic overwhelms them because there are a lot of vehicles and the indiscipline added. So what we are saying, it is the absence of a proper infrastructure plan. And don't tell us about costs. There is an idiocy going on in Lamahagar, between Campbellville and Prashad Nagar, where you build a proper road, for the want of a better word, but then you're building on a road on the inside that leads to nowhere, that helps no one except the PPP family, friends, and favorites. Rather than taking that money and putting it into a proper design road with overfly so that we're in a better position. Even with the road that they built along Prashad Nagar there, it is running in to a single road. So it is evident that there isn't a plan. I am engaged in a number of transportation, civil engineers, etc., and talking with them. And when I listen to these people, I wonder if the Public Works Ministry has engineers. I know they have. Probably Agile isn't listening. The government isn't listening. Or to do proper designs and do overflies, etc., which will demand quality contractors, will not allow them to make the money they make corruptly from these contracts. So I don't think one has to turn to the reduction of vehicles. Even if the vehicles are left at the present level, we are in trouble because there is no transportation plan. And that is where the problem lies. Corruption, absence of a transportation plan, among others, are the issues to be addressed. You know, sometimes, Adam, I try to find out if these people really plan on governing a country or they're just planning on making money. Because anybody who's serious about governing a country, we could accept Irfan Ali with all his defects. But that doesn't prevent him from engaging quality engineers to be advised so that he knows what Agile doing is garbage. I should also deal with the big trucks because that is an issue that is emerging. I saw people rightfully protesting over the West Demerara. If you live in Diamond or you pass through Diamond, which I do regularly now because it's a good route on your way to Linden, the roads that are being built are being destroyed by the big trucks. But the tendency is to blame the big trucks. But I have been saying that this government continues to build road for 2-ton trucks when they are much larger trucks. And since they have no plan, the roads they are building will broke up, for the want of a Guyanese thing, because they haven't changed the specification and building them in a way that they can take the trucks that are now operative in the society. It all comes down to the incompetence of the People's Progressive Party.
Thank you. I think I'll open the floor for other.
Yeah, something.
Go ahead, Mr. Harry.
Then the next question I'd have to ask is, there are many road projects that are incomplete. One that comes readily to mind is the Cemetery Road project. That's been going on for 3 years. Should you get into office, what does your government propose to do with these incomplete contracts?
Well, you are given a kind of a fait accompli because the roads are already being, it's like the gas to shore. We were advocating for ISO containerized gas, which would not have disrupted the seabed, which had some positives for export. The government in hard-headedness went ahead. So you get government, you're left with that. Some of them you will be left with. But the solution lies in finding proper contractors, ensuring there are proper specifications for the road, and that all that you are doing fits into a transportation plan. On the road you are talking about, when Agile was asked, he suggested that Jumbi coming from the background, and so the workers in one stay on the job. I mean, it's that level of idiocy. When I am no engineer, but when you talk with the engineers, they will tell you it is poor engineering, it is poor planning, and then Clearly, the contractors you're identifying might be your friend, your family, or your favorite, but they aren't competent. And those are the issues we have to deal with, and we will deal with to change the situation.
I'll open the floor for any other questions.
Mr. Norton, Dennis Shabral, and Marius again. Sir, in the area of any other questions, I wanted to ask you, first of all, how important do you see the Alliance for Change in unseating the People's Progressive Party at the next elections?
All forces of the opposition will be critical in dealing with and the removing the PPP from office. I believe Nigel Hughes is a welcome addition. The AFC was always there and will continue to be there. Nigel is the new leader of the AFC. I think he is a welcome addition. My honest hope is that we will pursue coalition politics and unseat the PPP. I believe that you need all the opposition elements. We need to recruit, which we are doing. We're not disclosing them now, but they are prominent citizens in this society that will appear on the PNC list that is part of the coalition. Because we do believe that there is need for a broad-based movement to unseat the PPP. And as the leader of the PNC and from the discussions we have been having, we are committed to removing the PPP from office because they are not operating in the interest of the people of Guyana. And we believe that coalitions, politics will be critical in doing that.
The issue of the conflict of interest involving Mr. Hughes and ExxonMobil and probably other oil companies, is that a worrisome factor for you in terms of working together with the AFC?
You know, the first thing I would say about that is this. Barra Jagdeo has no moral right to speak about conflict of interest. The PPP in its entirety, at all levels, are involved in conflict of interest. If I had believed that the PPP had an interest in conflict of interest, I would have pursued it. I believe the government must first show us that they believe in the principle of conflict of interest and remove the many conflicts of interests that are occurring under the People's Progressive Party.
No, I wasn't talking about, I wasn't exactly seeking a reaction from you with respect to what the PPP has been saying, but the fact of the matter is Mr. Hughes being a partner in his law firm, and that law firm works with ExxonMobil. He himself has acknowledged this. I'm asking whether you think that is a factor that is of concern to you.
Ideally, I wish it wasn't as it is, but as we progress, I think it's an issue we can address.
And in light of Mr. Hughes being on the ground, and of course you didn't recognize the AFC as being part of an important mechanism to remove the PPP, would you be willing to concede a presidential candidacy to him?
The question of the presidential candidacy has been determined by our party Congress. Our party Congress has passed a motion saying in clear terms that the leader of the PNC will be the presidential candidate.
But it also says if there were to be any other changes, you will solely decide. Hence my question to you.
That is when the time comes. It's not you just staying here and speculating. If you could tell me when the elections would be held, then I couldn't answer. But for now, none of us know when the elections could be held. And so what one has to do, if you are a proper leader, is to work out the various options, put your timelines, and then as the time progresses, you make decision based on the facts at your disposal. I am not in the business of being highly speculative on conjectures.
Is Mr. Greenwich a possible alternative to you?
Well, I don't know that Mr. Greenwich even wants to be a positive alternative. I think you're referring to something that I said. I said, if I'm not going to be the presidential candidate, well, there are other people in the PNC who can. And I'd mentioned Mr. Greenidge's name. I don't know that it followed from that Mr. Greenidge wanted to be, because I didn't discuss it with Mr. Greenidge. I could have called any other name, but I chose to call Mr. Greenidge's name, who is a competent economist. And I'm dead sure if he was running the economy, you won't get the nonsense you get from Barry Jackdale.
Question, sir.
Go ahead, Mr.
Now, APNU as it stands appears to be a separate entity from the APNU that you lead. What exactly is happening? Have you had a chance to talk to those who purport to be the leaders of this new APNU, sir?
I am engaging the persons in the APNU, and at the right time we will make public pronouncement on this question. I've merely said I continue to be the chairman of the APNU, and as that I've been engaging people. I don't want to say who and who I've been engaging, but I've been engaging the persons, and the APNU will meet and we will work on the way forward.
But so is the APNU as intact as it was when you became the leader of the party, sir? Is it so intact?
I don't know what you mean by being intact. When I became leader of the party, the mantle was passed to me, but there were issues to be resolved, and we will resolve those issues by the time we are ready to move for the elections.
What I was getting at, the APNU was supposed to have, APNU in quotes, was supposed to have an election, and they came up with a new executive.
I like the word supposed to.
And can someone on the outside looking in contend that election was farcical and of no value, sir?
You sound like you spoke to people. You can pronounce.
No, I just talking to you.
Well, all right. Let me say, give us the opportunity to deal with this issue, and then we will together make a pronouncement. I admire your enthusiasm. I'm thankful for it.
Mr. Orton, in around last conference, there were a lot of things being said about the way the Congress was being organized, the groups being formed and groups not being formed, etc., etc. I want to know, in light of all that is transpired and that have been said publicly, whether you will be extending the order to those persons who have been raising
extending a what? I didn't hear that.
Olive branches to those persons who had expressed those concerns about the electoral process. And in fact, a number of them are still members of parliament to the opposition benches.
They all continue to be members of parliament. They continue to be in the opposition benches. And I don't know that we have any plan to disrupt that. I will work with everyone in the PNC. I think the Congress was a manifestation of high levels of organization. It was a manifestation that the PNCR has did its work, has regrouped, now can boast of active groups in all 10 regions. You would have seen that it had a multi-ethnic component. And so I think the Congress has served as a good platform for us to launch our general and regional election campaign. And we are going to do that.
What I'm trying to ask from you is, going into the next elections, you would want to have all hands on deck. Would you specifically be reaching out to people like Mr. Royce Ford and Ferguson, Don Hastings, Williams, et al., to basically bridge the differences and move on in unity towards the next election?
You know, I've said before that when a party congress is coming, there is always competition, and that every person in the party has the right to run. The language you use to me tend to suggest that you have to extend an olive branch because, olive branch presupposes you are at war, and then you have to extend an olive branch for peace. I believe we have competed, we are at peace with ourselves, and all and sundry will be engaged to ensure that we have a united front going to the next election.
Thank you.
In fact, I can say, though not on a political matter, I've spoken with Roysdale, and I've also spoken with Amanza since the last election. And I do believe that we are going to meet, work together, and make our focus the removal of the People's Progressive Party from office. That is our major focus at this time.
No, sir, there is scope for further appointment by you to the Central Executive Committee. Have you considered some of the people you are going to add to that list?
When you're a leader, you keep everything in active consideration. And everything is in active consideration. When the right time comes, there will be decision. Even though the leader has the authority to appoint 5 persons, I want to consult with the party and then decide because it's 10 persons. 5, the leader has the authority to appoint, and 5 is done with the central executive of the party. I think we've just completed a successful Congress. We want to use that momentum moving forward. And as we keep all of these matters into consideration, we are going to address them as the time arrives.
Thank you.
Do you think that your party is in a much stronger position now coming out of this Congress?
Yes, I like the word stronger because it meant we were strong. And one of the superlatives there is strong, stronger. I like the word strong, and I agree we are. We were always strong, and I think Congress has strengthened us some more.
Compared to the last Congress?
Well, I don't want to compare with the last Congress. The last Congress, you were in opposition.
The previous one.
The previous one was one that was held during COVID and was virtual. I always say, Aristotle said years ago, you don't compare unequals. How do you compare an in situ Congress with a virtual Congress? I won't want to be involved in that kind of comparison.
No, I was actually trying to get from you whether you're in a stronger position now, given the fact of who are now voting on the executive compared to the past executive members.
I would not venture to say who is stronger, who isn't. What I would venture to say is that the decision to elect people resides in the people in the party, the delegates, and the delegates elected those persons. And I assume that they believe that this is the best group to serve the party at this stage. And I think they would be cognizant of the fact that there is scope for co-option. Our constitution provides some interesting flexibilities. The leader can invite people. We have invited some experienced people to be there. You must recognize that the group is a combination of youth and experience, and that there are a lot of young people there who will have to learn, and we will bring together an executive that can deal with the challenges that are posed to opposition leadership, and invitees who can contribute. As a party, we have not been operating just alone. We have an oil and gas committee, which, Jack, we're trying to find out the best who are the members. They will continue to be as in algebra. We have put together an engineering group that we are engaging with, an education group. We take the governing of this country seriously, and we will do everything to ensure that there is an executive and supportive mechanism so that when we get government, we have the ability, the capacity, and the knowledge to change Ghana in the direction it ought to be changed.
Question. Oh, sorry. You want me to go, Dennis?
Go ahead.
No, a lot of things have been happening. You've been we've been seeing demolition of homes, and you have pronounced that there will be boots on the ground. So how is your boots on the ground program going?
Extremely well. You would have seen MPs at the demolition, but our boots on the ground really is essentially a program in which in all 10 regions, we are encouraging our activists to be out there, educating people and canvassing to ensure that we are successful at the next elections. We are intensifying that program. And so I would say it is going good, but there is always scope for improvement, and we will improve on the ground.
Why I'm interested in that too. At the last election, there were polling stations where the coalition did not have any representative. Is your program going to attempt to change that to ensure that you have a representative at every polling station, sir?
One of the signal honor I think I have had was every area that I ran an election. I ran in Region 3, I ran in Linden. However difficult the terrain was politically, we had polling agents in all polling stations. I know you are referring to somewhere on the east, some places on the East Coast. We have since revamped the East Coast leadership, and we have adequate persons on the East Coast, on the East Bank, all around the country to ensure we can man all polling stations. We have increased the membership of the party, and I can assure you that that will occur, and we are beginning a set of training shortly. You know, we believe that whenever Barry Jackdale says Sunday, you must look at Tuesday.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions? I'll take about
Yes,
one.
Mr. Norton, how do you intend to convince Guyanese at large, especially in those in your non-traditional support base, as well as within your traditional support base, that they should vote for the People's National Congress Reform Already coalition that it belongs, in light of the concerns that have been raised about the electoral process of your party, you know, concerns about rigging and all the irregularity?
You know, in war, sometimes you're not allowed to choose the troops you go to war with, the conditions in which you go to war. We're preparing for all conditions, and we're going to convince them that we can do what is necessary to ensure we succeed at the next general and regional elections.
Yeah, but that is not addressed the whole question of alleged electoral malpractices within your party.
Oh, within our party, what electoral malpractices you're talking about?
Well, those that were raised by Mr. Fouad.
Listen, our election was on video. Everybody saw it. The process was transparent. I don't know what malpractices you're talking about. We have had a transparent election, which the videos are there to see. We have had our groups do the nomination, sign off on them, send them, and I am fully aware that we had a Congress that was open, transparent, and that the people, the delegates of this party across the country were able to exercise their franchise in a free and open way.
Was the system padded in favor of you?
Well, I didn't control the system, so I can't tell you who it was. If you're using the system to mean the people in the party, it is evident that the party membership, I have been in contact with them, they were in contact with me, and they have been supportive of me as leader of the party. I don't know that the system favored me. I know the people on the ground who I've been working with, the delegates, favored me, and they showed that in their election.
Thank you very much. All right. At this time, I want to thank our media personnel for joining today's person. Of course, our viewing audience on all our social media platforms. Thank you, and do have a wonderful afternoon.